your windows. Lock your doors. Keep your loved ones near. Time is running out. It's here for fear.
Welcome to Ear for Fear. This is Donovan.
And I'm Rick.
And this is the podcast where we talk about movies that are trying to be scary or are scary. I'll get it next time.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, today we're talking about 1980's The Changeling, starring George C. Scott. This one I'm glad we're talking about. I recommended it because this is one of my favorite horror movies like ever. So before we jump in, let's give a quick kind of synopsis of what this is about or plot. John Russell, who is played by George C. Scott, is a composer. He ends up losing his wife and daughter in a freak automobile accident. Consumed by grief, John, at the request of his friends, moves back to Seattle, Washington, and rents an old turn-of-the-century home. Enormous in size, the house seems all the room that John needs to write new music and mourn the death of his family. He soon realizes he's not alone in the house. The spirit of a child starts to communicate with John. With the help of Claire Norman, the lady who helped John acquire the house, they investigate the identity of the dead child and discover the mystery as to the boy's death. So, Donovan, did you like this movie, The Changeling?
Yeah, I did. It was a good movie.
Now, I can't remember. Did I have you watch this when you were younger?
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't remember this movie very well. I thought I did, but I think I'm getting movies mixed up. I remember a movie with a chair at the top of a stairs, but it was like spinning. Does that sound familiar to you?
A chair and spin.
Does that happen in The Burning?
In The Burning?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe. I haven't seen The Burning in a while.
Okay, so what's happened then is I've got this movie all twisted in my brain. Because I remember most of this movie.
Hold on. Are you thinking of Burnt Offerings?
Oh, it has to be that.
The one with Betty Davis where the house is kind of alive and they move a family in, and then what happens over time is they start dying off, and then the house is essentially, basically like it's alive. And so if anyone dies or gets hurt, it like brings life to the house.
I think what's happening is I'm getting like movies mixed up in my head.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary.
That might be, I'm trying to remember it. There is a scene at the very end of Burnt Offerings where they go up into the husband goes up into the bedroom because he's looking for his wife. And he goes up and opens up the door, and he's talking to this old lady who he thinks is an old lady, and he's, talking to her, no answer, and then he turns around and it's his wife, and she looks just crazy, and that to me is one of my favorite endings of all time, which is Burnt Offerings. The movie itself is okay. I think it was like made for TV or something like that. I like it. I just don't love it. But that ending is probably my top 5 endings ever. Just thinking about it gives me like the chills. It's just a creepy. Then the husband, he's basically thrown out the window and it lands on the car. Yeah, is that the one you're thinking of?
I don't know why I'm thinking of a spinning chair.
Yeah, the chair doesn't spin. I'm not sure.
Maybe it happens in the remake of The Ring. Is there a spinning chair in The Ring?
No.
Dude, I don't. Yeah. I've got this image of a spinning chair at the top of a staircase, and I also could have swore that he died in this movie, George C. Scott.
Oh, really?
But he doesn't. Some other old guy dies, and
yeah,
I remember this movie. I know I've seen it before, but definitely not all of it. I also remember when I first saw this movie, it was super creepy.
Yeah,
and now I'm noticing as we're watching these movies, I'm just kind of noticing all the framework.
Yeah.
And it's like I know when the movie's trying to be scary. And I'm just kind of noticing the structure of it in a way that I didn't before.
Yeah.
So I'm almost thinking this podcast is spoiling scares for me.
Yeah. We kind of are.
It's just when we're watching these like back to back to back, it's like, okay, here's the scary spectacle that I'm about to watch, and I know what the movie's doing. It also doesn't help when I've seen these movies before. And yeah, I don't remember this movie entirely, but I remember like enough to know that, okay, I remember vaguely what's going on here. I forgot the banging from this movie was from young Carmichael being murdered. And I remember the banging being very scary. But once I know, like this movie and the movie we're going to be talking about next week, spoilers, we're going to be talking about the others.
Yeah.
Um, they both kind of they take on a different context when you know the mystery behind it. And in this movie, like I just kind of felt bad because I remembered enough about the movie to know that the mystery was some sort of communication happening. And once I knew that, like this movie was less scary and more kind of sad in a way.
Yeah. I agree. I it's hard because I mean we're talking about these movies, so if no one's ever seen it, yeah, we're kind of giving away some of the if there is a surprise ending, we're giving that away. Or if it's not a surprise ending, we're just kind of giving stuff away in general. But that's kind of what we're doing here, talking about the movie itself. So it kind of lends itself to we got it. I mean, we don't want to do the movie a disservice and not talk about everything. But I understand what you're saying. I don't. I know. I think I probably played this for you when you were younger. I don't remember when I did. I know a few years back I played it for Andrea, and she actually more than a few years. She was probably like maybe like 8 or 9, and this scared her. It scared the crap out of her.
Yeah.
I remember her. We were chilling on the couch, and we were. I put it on for her, and we were watching it, and she kept pulling the blanket over her head, and she loved the movie, but found it very very scary. And I've seen this movie so many times over the years because again, it's one of my favorite horror movies. But I there are still parts, and I know everything that's going to happen, and I know when it's going to happen. But there are a few scenes that scare me. They I watched it earlier, and the scene with we could talk about it later, but the scene when the wheelchair is at the top of the stairs, and Claire, um, she sees it, and just the look on her face, the panic, she is literally frozen. And then they pan to the wheelchair, and it's just that music, and the hair on my arms stand up. And it does it to me every time. And I've seen this movie so many times, and that's a sign of a really good scene and a really good movie, and the music just sets the tone, which I always, especially in a movie like this, we're talking about a ghost story, which is probably my favorite of like say a subcategory of the horror genre. Ghost stories are my favorite, and if you don't have good music, it doesn't I don't think it really pays off. You have to have its violin or its piano, it's or the organ, those types of things. If you don't have those and you're not doing it right, it just kind of fails.
The performances really sell it. Whoever plays Claire, she kind of kills it.
That's God, what is her name? That's Trish Vanderveer.
Trish
Which
Vanderveer.
Yeah, she was actually married in real life to George C. Scott.
Oh,
The
perfect.
star. I didn't know this until today because I was checking out some of the special features because Morris recently bought this for me on Blu-ray because I had it on DVD, and I was checking out some of the special features, and I did not know this at all. That they were, I guess, married in real life.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, yeah.
She when she just does a scary face, it's very very affecting, and it makes me scared.
Very convincing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me the scariest scene in the movie is actually when he's trying to get rid of the ball, and then the ball comes back and it's wet, and he's just toss it into the river, and it just goes boom 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 boom.
Yeah,
That's the scariest scene for me.
that's up there with me as well.
Yeah, that's one that I'll never forget. It's very effective. But then it's immediately followed up with like one of the goofiest things I've seen in a movie, where he actually goes to the college he works at, and there's a psychic research like department.
Yeah.
And like, what are you talking about? And then he's like, yeah, 99% of people who come in suck, but there's like 1% that's the real deal. And I was like, no college has ever done this ever.
No.
But besides that, yeah, I quite like this movie.
So
I will say that this movie and the movie we're talking about next week are kind of slow burns. Or they're ones that will that are totally content, just kind of lingering in on the spooky mystery of what's going on in the story, and then letting you kind of watch that happen, whether it's a door opening by itself, the piano playing by itself, or just watching our characters be frightened or learn something. And I'm quite into movies that do that.
yeah, I agree. Definitely. I what we'll notice is the similarities of these two movies, and it's interesting. You and I, when we picked these, I picked The Changeling. You wanted to do the others.
But
we
I
ju-
wanted to do the others like weeks ago,
I know you did.
like a very long time ago before we even. I think we always knew we wanted to do the Changeling,
Yeah.
but they just kind of like happened to be back to back.
Happen to be it's strictly a coincidence, but they're very similar. You know, they're both ghost stories, but they have these other similarities that I didn't catch originally until rewatching them again. And are they a coincidence? You know, it's a coincidence in the sense that we're watching them. You know, we're doing one and the next week doing the other, but there are other things going on in there that can't be a coincidence. Very, very similar, and we're talking about movies that were done 21 years apart. So, but let's start. I didn't know this, and this was part of the special features. Seen this movie tons of times. This is actually based off a true story.
Oh,
Did not know this at all until I started watching the special features on this. This particular story happened in Denver, Colorado, back in the 60s. I won't go into great detail, but there are there was a home. They called it the Chessman home. It was a home that was on this, I think it was a street called Chessman Park or something like that. The original title of this movie, or working title, was The House on Chessman Park. And there was a guy that lived there. His name was, I think his name was it John? I can't remember his name. But he lived there. Very similar. Russell Hunter. Our character's name is John Russell. So Russell Hunter lived there. All of these things that have occurred in this movie happened to him in real life.
I don't believe any of that.
Again, that is what I had watched today on the special features. It was a very interesting story. It was told by like a historian from the Denver area, and it sounds very believable in the movie. If you remember when Claire is introducing her mother to John, and she says, "Hey, you know, mother, this is John. He lives in the Chessman home." So, yeah, I don't know how much to believe. It's kind of like with the Amityville Horror. You know, it's loosely based off a true story. How much is real? How much is, you know, fabricated? Probably the same thing here.
All the ghost stuff is what's fabricated. Yeah.
You don't believe in the ghosts?
No, I don't.
You know? I do.
Absolutely not.
No.
No.
Well, I believe in ghosts. I believe in something, you know, some sort of entity.
You know, it's another strange coincidence, because I was also watching The Good Place. Are you familiar with The Good Place?
No.
You should be, because you watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and
Yeah.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine is created by Michael Schur. He also did Parks and Rec, and then he also did The Good Place.
I think you told me about this like before.
He's kind of knocked it out of the park with those 3 sitcoms. And then now 2 of them have ended, and The Good Place ended just earlier this year. And he just has a knack for good endings.
It's a Good Place as a sitcom?
Yeah. It's
Oh.
a philosophical sitcom, really. It's
Oh.
about The Good Place is in reference to like heaven. So
Okay.
there's a good place and a bad place, and it's more played for laughs. I'm sure like Michael should just had this idea, thought it was funny, and then thought it'd be a good opportunity to like talk about, you know, philosophy, the
Mhm.
afterlife, what it means to be a good person and a bad person. But The Good Place takes place in the afterlife. and I watched the finale to that show last night.
Oh,
So I've got like this movie on our on my, not your mind, but my mind. I've got uh next week's movie, The Others, on my mind, and now I've got The Good Place on my mind.
Hmm.
And all three of these works are talking about the afterlife and some life. For The Changeling and The Others, it's about ghosts.
yeah.
The Others, and we'll talk about this next week, but in The Others, the afterlife, ghosts essentially almost exist in Earth in some sort of like almost like a limbo, but it's not. But they're kind of coexisting on Earth with, the people who are alive. In this movie, The Changeling, we're talking about spirits that are in a state of unrest who can't move on without, some sort of retribution happening.
Yeah.
In this case, the murder of, we'll talk about it, but the murder of the fake Carmichael, who had no idea what was going on with his dad, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Definitely.
I don't think he's complicit in his crimes, even though he's, reaping the benefit of it. And then The Good Place, which is, taking place in the afterlife, and that's its own perspective. And then what's after the afterlife. And so I kind of got hit by like these three different perspectives of what it means to be dead. And I'm like in this weird emotional state right now because now I'm thinking about mortality and what comes next and all this stuff. Do I think it's ghosts? Absolutely not. I almost think that's a discredit to being alive. Is it heaven? I don't think so either. But, and then when it comes to this podcast, I kind of want to keep it apolitical and whatever the term is for a-religious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm just like in this weird spot where I'm like thinking about all this stuff. And it's just such a weird coincidence. And now we're talking about The Changeling. And I find this movie kind of so sad because the entire plot of this movie is just a boy who was murdered trying to reach out to another man who untimely lost his family in a position emotionally that's kind of the same. Somewhat. I mean, there's arguments to be made.
Yeah. I mean, he's grieving.
Right.
He's mourning the loss of his wife and daughter. It's some weird freak accident.
Yeah, and that I don't know if that makes it easier for him to communicate, but the boy, Carmichael, is trying to get help, essentially. I find this a very empathetic movie.
Yeah,
where
it is. The way they do this, it's very sad, very emotional, which you don't see a lot of in horror movies. They usually do certain things in horror movies. This one, they're doing some of these things that you see in other ones, but you're feeling for these characters a lot more. You're feeling for for John and the death of his wife and his daughter. It feels personal, everything that's transpiring. You don't see that a lot in these movies. And it's the sense of death and pain that he's going through is it's very powerful to me.
Yeah, I like this movie. It doesn't hit you over the head with it. We've only seen him cry one time, and it's very quickly preceded by a scare.
Yeah.
Or, an uncomfortable scene or whatever, an unsettling, creepy scene, because he's crying in bed and then it goes bang, bang, bang. And of course, that's the boy. I think this might be the first time he's trying to communicate with Scott, George C. Scott's character, Russell.
John Russell, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the second time we hear the banging because he had heard the banging the previous day at 6 a.m. He hears it again the following day, but yes, he's crying in bed. The realization, that it's only been 3 or 4 months since the death of his wife and his daughter. He moved away. He set up in this big mansion or this big home. It's huge and it's empty. It's just him and really his piano because he's a composer. And so he sits there, and which I think any of us would do. He sits there. He wakes up in the morning, and he's just this overwhelming sense of emptiness that they're gone, and he starts crying, and it's immediately interrupted by this banging from Joseph. We don't know it's Joseph right off the bat. We eventually find out it's Joseph, but it's this banging that, it sounds like it could be pipes, it could be the furnace. So, but I think we're getting maybe a little ahead of ourselves. Not
No,
a
we're
great
talking
deal.
about a movie. There's no way we can get ahead of ourselves. And that's the interesting thing about movies is they kind of exist forever. And it's kind of a complicated idea I'm trying to state. But you've ever watched like a movie or a TV show and like your favorite character like dies?
Yeah.
Well, you just rewatch the movie again, then they're alive for like another hour. I don't think we can get ahead of ourselves when we're talking about movies.
True.
But I guess if we want to talk about the plot, the movie begins with a very, very old George C. Scott with a very, very young wife and his daughter. I mean, whatever. Let's just ignore that. I just find that weird. Let's ignore it. Let's not talk about it. Let's not talk about it.
You don't want to talk about it?
No, I find this idea so like ugly these days.
But hold on a second. I'm glad you brought this up because, and again, I don't know how old George C. Scott was when this was made. So you could be absolutely right. Now that we know that they were married in real life. So, maybe it wasn't so weird. They were married in real life. She looked younger. Maybe he was close in age, just looked older. I was talking about this with the coworker. If you look at older photographs of some of these actors, let's just say actors in this instance, because we're talking about a movie. If you go back, say the 70s and 80s, and you look at some of these actors, and then you take someone that is that same age and you go to today, they look substantially older. And I'm gonna throw out his name, Jake. Jake Poindexter. He's one of my coworkers. He was kind enough to do the intro for our podcast. He's talked about this a few times, and when I start to analyze it, he's really right. For all we know, George C. Scott could have been 50 and looked like 70, but he just at that time just looked older. And I don't have a particular explanation on why that is.
I'm just not into like super old guys dating super young people. It just weirds me out. Not into it.
Well, but again, if his wife at the time was 30 and he was 50, okay, yeah, I mean, we see it. It happens, especially in Hollywood. But I don't know how old George C. Scott was at the time. We're talking about 1979, 1980 that this came out. How do we know that his wife, how do we know we were close in age? I mean,
we just look it up. That's how we know.
Look it up while we're talking. I mean, he definitely looked substantially older than her, for sure.
And we're talking about the wife that dies at the
start. So we're not talking about Claire. So my apologies. We're not talking about Claire.
Does she
Claire,
have a name?
No, I think it's just his wife. So yeah, let me go back. Obviously, Claire is Trish, or is it Trish Vanderveer? Yeah, Trish Vanderveer, which is his wife in real life. She looks really young. So if we know they were married, and the wife at the beginning, who gets him and the daughter that gets hit by the car, she definitely looked a lot younger too. But maybe they weren't too far. I mean, the daughter looked probably 12 or 13. Maybe they just started late. But they're on vacation. I think it was New York, right? They break down. The car breaks down in the snow, so the opening scene is them pushing the car. You seem like a very happy family. And he goes to make a phone call in a phone booth, and there's a freak accident, and they both die. I think that a big like rig or truck, crushes them or kills them. We don't see it, but it's just implied. So then it skips. 4 months later, he leaves New York, comes back to Seattle, Washington, to teach at the university and to compose music. Trying to cope with the death of his wife and daughter. 4 months is not a long time to get past this. I don't know if you ever get past something like that. So he meets up with some friends. They're glad he's there. He's wants to write some music. he's they talked to him about renting out, staying at a hotel. The wife of his friend makes a recommendation. Hey, we know some people that work for the historical society that eventually, I think they lease out these homes, and so he gets in contact with. That's when we're introduced to Claire, and Claire shows him the house. He moves into this old home. She hasn't been working for the historical society long, I think a year, so doesn't know much of anything about the house. Knows that it's last been occupied like 12 years ago. So he doesn't really think anything of it. Moves in and starts composing music. So, did you find out what the age gap was?
No, like the actor, they're like the same age basically. There's no way that's right because she looked like she was like
Like I said,
like late 20s or something.
So is it possible? I think.
Look, I don't really care.
You don't care? Okay.
I don't care about this. This
No?
is so unimportant, dude.
All right.
This is no. Let's talk about the movie.
All right. So that's where we're at. He's now in the house. He's composing music. He's teaching. I think he's teaching or doing some lectures at the university. He's composing music, playing. He's a pianist playing the piano.
Yeah, apparently he's pretty famous. He makes a joke when he goes to his first lecture that apparently there's like he only had 30 students registered, but there was like a packed auditorium, easily like over 100 people, maybe 200 people were in there. So he must have a name outside of. Well, he just must be very popular, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, he's an alum. He's alumni.
Yeah, but
and so he's obviously a. I don't know how famous of a composer he is. He was living in New York, so maybe I don't know. Probably was.
Well, we know he's famous.
Successful.
He had like 3 or 30 people were registered. He had like 200 people show up, so he must be like a big deal.
The whole thing was full.
Yeah, so he tries to make music at the mansion. We get our first little spooky scene.
Yeah.
He's playing on the piano. There's a dead key, and then he walks away to talk to his gardener or to the whatever you call a person that sort of maintains a house.
Yeah, handyman.
The carekeeper.
Yeah, caretaker. Carekeeper.
Yeah, whatever.
I like it.
Thanks.
Carekeeper.
And then I guess the boy. We don't see any boy yet. It's just a spooky little thing that happens by itself.
With
the key, the dead key plays, and it actually plays the note
as he leaves the room in the music room.
Yeah. This movie is very slow. It's not a very long movie. It's about an hour and 45 minutes. Around the length of time you'd want your movie to be, and it's very prone to just kind of spending time on this spooky stuff and Russell figuring out this mystery or mourning/grieving.
Yeah.
Almost everything he does seems to be a way of sort of getting over the fact that his wife and daughter died. Even if he doesn't seem to realize it. I think that's why he doesn't just leave the house. He wasn't able to help his daughter and his wife when they were being run down by the vehicle. He tried to, but there was nothing he could do.
No.
And now he's got this opportunity to help some boy who passed before his time in a very savage manner. And that's why he doesn't leave. So this whole movie's like, it's such a smart framing device to have a man in grief helping a boy who's kind of looking to, it's not the most flattering idea. I think this kid needs to get revenge in order to find peace. So, I mean, that's kind of problematic, but Russell is there to help the boy.
Do you think that, we know that no one had occupied the house in 12 years. And I, during the movie, we hear that, other people try to live there. They couldn't because they heard things and they left. Do you think that, other than someone being there and the boy not wanting it, do you think that because John is in this grieving process that, maybe there was some sort of like connection there between the two?
Yeah, I absolutely think that. I think the only reason this boy was able to not get the help is because he didn't find anyone as empathetic as Russell. Russell was just in the very right situation emotionally for this boy to connect with. Spooky stuff starts to happen,
I'm out. Yeah,
you're out of there.
I'm out.
So if previous tenants, and I'm pretty sure at this point in the story there hadn't been a previous tenant in 12 years.
Yeah.
They just got the hell out of there because if there's this weird banging that's unexplained. Things are moving around. Like it's just a bunch of weird stuff. And I can almost see that from the boy's perspective, if his means of communication, which is doing all this weird stuff in the house, isn't working, then let's just try someone new. Let's get these guys the heck out of here.
Yeah, I mean, a window, I think it was a top window that just breaks by itself, glass flies. I mean, all these little things that are happening. I'll be honest, I would have been gone. I wouldn't have stuck around to try to solve, this mystery.
No. So, yeah, I mean, the boy lucked out with Russell coming in there. I think him being there is pure coincidence, but the fact that he was there is very fortuitous for him.
Yeah.
And that's, again, when you're watching this movie for the first time, it is very spooky.
Absolutely.
The second time, when you've got context for all the things that's happening on screen, it's sad in a way. And I almost feel bad for John because the only way for him to communicate is basically manipulating the house in some way. You know?
I agree. I agree definitely. So no, absolutely. I like I said, I still find this movie scary. I've seen it several times. I know what's going to happen, and that's just a sign of a well-made movie.
The
The
movie's
acting, the acting's great. We absolutely feel for all these characters. Mainly being George C. Scott, John Russell, Claire, and this boy, this Joshua, and as we go along and we find out what has happened to him, it's horrible. It's just a horrible thing. And so, we're introduced, I think, at this point, there's a scene at I think the orchestra, John goes out, goes to see this, and I don't know if this is explained. Is this his music that's maybe being played, or is this just going out to get out of the house and join some of my friends, and I can dress up and I can go see this, see the, listen to this beautiful music. And
I don't know. At the very least, it was an invitation around the people that are helping him get back on his feet. Right?
Yeah, I
That's
think
kind of how I took it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But of course, it's a smart movie, so we're introduced to the senator.
Yeah,
He
Senator
makes
Carmichael.
a speech. Yep. Remember that last name. So we hear him talk for a bit, but other than that, it's him talking to Claire and Claire's mom, and they're talking about the house in some fashion.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Not. I don't think there was a ton of dialogue there, but I think it was mainly, it served the purpose to introduce to Senator Carmichael, because we know as we go along, Senator Carmichael is, he's a main character here, and yeah, I don't know if a main character is correct, but he definitely comes into play. It is super, super important as to this movie.
He's the closest thing this movie has to an antagonist, and I think I'm noticing this when it comes to ghost stories, is that the only antagonist is the mystery of what's happening and the fight against all this weird stuff that's happening around your house. I've noticed that these movies just kind of you live with the scares, and you either try to fix it, you try to get the presence out, but there's no real villain. And when it comes to this movie, Senator Carmichael is the closest you have to that, but he's only in like 3 scenes. And he's not even on screen for more than like 10 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if it's even that. I mean,
other than that, like Russell's obvious, or Baby Carmichael, Ghost Carmichael is obviously not a villain. He's just trying to enlist help from Russell.
Yeah.
It just happens to be through the spooky means because,
Yeah.
when it comes to the real world, wheelchairs moving around, glass shattering, all that stuff, that's unexplained and scary because it's unexplainable, at least, without context.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, um, Just an interesting thought I've had. Between this and the others, there really is no antagonist in these movies. And you don't see
No.
that very often in horror movies where
Yeah.
the antagonist is usually the thing that's trying to kill you. But in both of these movies, no one's trying to be killed.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the next day after he goes to the see the music, the orchestra. I think that's the next morning that we had talked about earlier when we see him in bed and he's crying. Then immediately it's that banging noise and he just can't figure out what's happening. Mr. Tuttle, the handyman or the whatever what do we call him? Caretaker of the
my word was carekeeper. I think.
Carekeeper. I like it. He's the carekeeper, the caretaker of the house. Like I said, he's the handyman. He does all the little things around the house. He tells John, I think it's maybe the furnace. Furnace is old and it has a mind of its own sometime. Of course we know it's not the furnace. He starts to hear voices. I think he's hearing voices in the house because he asked Mr. Tuttle. I think there's a scene where he asked Mr. Tuttle, "Hey, is so and so here?" And he goes,
No, he only asked that because the door opened.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the door opened unexplained, and it was like, "Oh yeah, I was looking for you, Mr. Tuttle," because he thought that he had come into the room or whatever, or he had opened the door in some manner. But no, he doesn't hear voices until the seance.
Oh, I thought he had heard voices. I thought there was something like around the corner that he'd heard.
I don't think so.
No,
I mean, maybe you're right. I could have swore it was just the door.
Yeah, I don't know. You might be right.
I just don't remember voices popping up until the seance. Or he's got it on the recorder.
I'm pretty sure that he thought he had heard something. We know the door opens. That gets his attention, and I thought he thought he'd heard something around the corner, and that's why he asked Mr. Tuttle, "Hey, is there anyone else here?" But
you're probably right. I mean, you've seen this movie like a billion times. I've only seen it twice.
I mean, yeah, but I think Claire comes by the house. She'd had some old pictures. I think that that used to be hanging up somewhere in the house, and she thought it'd be nice if he had them, So she comes by, she's dressed up in her like horseback riding gear, and he ends up going horseback riding with her,
Yeah, this is the boring stuff that happens in the movie.
Pretty
don't
much.
Need to spend a lot of time on it. This is just table setting. Claire's getting to know Russell and vice versa. And then we also get some more scenes of Russell basically mourning the death of his daughter because, his daughter liked horses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's we don't have to spend a ton of time on it. I think at this point he has a few of his students over and they're practicing. Is that what you call it? I guess practicing music. I mean, I don't know what else you call it.
I don't know what this is. I think it's almost like a private. No, it can't be a private lesson. I don't know.
I think he's there. He probably enlists the help of some of his students to help
compose
music. Yeah, to help compose the music. So I think there's like four students there, and they're practicing. They wrap it up. He tells them goodbye. Comes inside the house and he hears a faucet. I think the faucet's running in the kitchen, which of course is strange to him because I didn't leave it on. So
probably one of those darn kids.
One of those darn. One of his students. So he starts hearing other noises though. He hears other running water upstairs. This is a big house. So I think this is 3 stories. And he goes to the second story. He hears water. Then all of a sudden he doesn't hear water, but he hears it now on the 3rd floor. So he goes up to the 3rd floor and there's a closed door and it looks like we see a light coming from it. But he opens up the door and I didn't see any light on, but it was just its way of getting him up there. We see a running faucet in the tub. The tub's running. He goes to turn it off, I believe, and he sees an image of this boy, which takes him back.
Yep, that's our first look at Baby Carmichael. It's unexplained at this point. Just a spooky scene, and it is spooky.
It's creepy.
Yeah, and most people at this point would be getting the hell out. But he doesn't. He actually kind of takes it surprisingly well.
Yeah.
And a part of me thinks that at this point in the movie that he's taken it so well because earlier in the film, when he was talking to his buddies, he was basically saying that I went crazy for a while. I just kept muttering to myself, they're gone, they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah.
And I think from his perspective that this is just him kind of dealing with their deaths in a manner that might invoke madness from his perspective. Like he's going kind of crazy being alone in this big house, but he definitely sticks around still.
And it's definitely, and all those things are feasible, right? I mean, he goes to the historical society to talk to Claire, tells her what he's seen, and I think she even says something like, hey, John, you've done, working a lot of hours and you're doing all this stuff. Is it possible you're just doing too much?
Yeah, and then what's her name? She has a very interesting name, Miss Huxley. Is that her name?
Oh, the other. I think her first name was Minnie, because I remember her talking to Mr. Carmichael later on in the movie, and I think he calls her Minnie, or
Whatever.
something like that. But
Minnie Huxley.
Minnie Huxley.
I
something
definitely
like
remember
that.
Huxley. That's a cool
Is
name.
that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So she kind of gives a little spooky stuff, saying like, "Ooh, yeah, the house is the house doesn't like people."
Yeah. The house. What does she say? That house is not fit to live in.
There you go. Obviously, we can talk about it now. Miss Huxley is aware of some stuff with Senator Carmichael. She doesn't know the full details. That would make a lot of sense. I don't expect her to. But she does know that it's a sensitive matter for Senator Carmichael.
Yeah.
So her saying that to Russell is kind of her way of saying it's a spooky house. We've had trouble. Tenants have had trouble in that house before. That's why it's been 12 years since anyone's lived there. You should probably get out. But it's all insinuation. She's just kind of saying,
she's trying to freak him out.
yeah, get out of there, basically.
She's trying to freak him out. If it was me, it would have worked, and I would have been gone. Because I think she says something like that. The house doesn't want people.
Yeah, and it seems that way. All the
absolutely.
spooky stuff going on. Yeah, I mean, if a place is going to be uncomfortable for me to live in, what you do is you try to leave. You do everything you can to leave. Might be hard, but that's what you do. So movie progresses, and then we get some more stuff. Again, all these spooky scenes are just baby Carmichael trying to get Russell to, figure everything out.
Yeah.
So it's
trying to lead him to all of these clues, kind of, to kind of Scooby-Doo this thing. I need you to. I'm gonna break the window on the third floor. You're gonna see this because you're leaving the house, and it's gonna happen, and you're gonna.
Well, Russell's curious enough to want to know where it comes from.
Of course.
So he sees at the very top of the building that there's this red glass, and that's the same red glass that's popped down onto the ground for some unexplained reason. So he investigates. He can't find that room. Then he finds out that the room has been boarded up.
Yeah, like an old closet or something.
Like it's been turned into a closet. But behind that closet is a doorway that then leads upstairs to essentially an attic.
Does he feel a breeze? Do you remember that? I thought maybe because when you open up the door, it just looks like a closet. And I thought he saw a breeze come through. And maybe
how do you see a breeze?
Well, if there's breeze coming through and let's say it hits I don't know, a cobweb or a paper.
I think he just saw like
he just saw
I think he just saw like, oh yeah, there's like space here at the top.
No, I thought he'd.
Like Indiana Jones did or something.
Yeah, Indiana Jones did. Yeah, like maybe a breeze came through and he felt it or saw it or something.
There was no like cobwebs or anything, and there was no like whistling sound. Usually you hear like a whistling, like ooh.
No, is that how it whistle? Hold on, yeah. How does the whistle go? Ooh.
I think no. He just saw some space, and of course Russell's like, okay, well, yeah, I can't find this place. This place is obviously boarded up. Then he just makes a mess.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, oh yeah, Mr. Tuttle's going to be the one having to clean this up. And then if you notice, I don't know if they just reuse the same shot over and over again, but you see the same two boards in the shot whenever we're looking from the attic downwards, where Russell did his business and got everything out of there. You see the same two boards. Like, what the hell? Why didn't they clean it up?
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
And it just bothered me.
Like, oh, really?
Why wouldn't you just clean up these two boards?
So when you're looking down from the attic.
Yeah, there's two boards that were like part of whatever, blocking the doorway.
Yeah.
It's like you cleaned everything else up. There was like paint cans and like broken vases. You couldn't move those two boards.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
I don't know. I just noticed it every single time and it took me out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like what the hell's Mr. Tuttle doing?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's not earning his keep.
The guy sucks.
I didn't notice that. That's weird. That you, I didn't even notice it.
It's not important. I just noticed it, and it bothered me for some reason.
No, I get you. There are times when I notice stuff in movies, and I can't let it go. And I didn't notice it, but yeah. Now next time I'm watching, now I'm going to notice it.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
So he finds the attic. He goes upstairs, and then he sees like a whole bunch of cobwebs, and just real.
Hold on. But remember what he's trying to. He's trying to. There's a lock on the door.
Oh, right.
And he's taking a hammer and he's banging this thing, and then all of a sudden we hear that banging, and then he finally, and then he keeps banging on it, and then the lock comes off, and he's trying to push the door in. He's using all his weight, and then the door opens up by itself.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's cool.
I actually like that.
Yeah, I like that too.
But yeah, it gets up into this attic, and it's, it's dusty. It's cobwebs everywhere. You can tell no one's been in it forever. And he's looking around. I think he finds a journal. Is it a diary or a journal? Same difference, I guess. It's dated like 1909 or something like that. And it's obviously, I don't know if he opens it up at this point, but then I think he finds, he's looking around. You see the old wheelchair. I think he sees the music box. He opens up the music box, and it starts playing this music that he definitely recognizes.
Well, it's music he composed earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
For the first time.
Which he never had heard before.
So either he stole it, which he didn't, or, this is something trying to communicate with him. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Using his music.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then there's a lot of like cobwebs in here. So, it's like super old because there's a lot of cobwebs and dust.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's just how you know it's old.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
I always wonder how did they do that? Because they look great, right? I mean, I know, you got people that work on these things, and that is their job to make it look that way. But I've always wondered, like,
for me, I know there's probably no spider alive that creates that many cobwebs without there being like corpses of dead bugs in them.
Sure. I don't know.
It annoyed me, and it's like, okay, they just have this here because that's what old things look like.
They're trying to convey the fact that it's old and no one has been in this room in 50, 60, I don't know how many
Would
years.
There even be like dust? I can see there being dirt like blown in from like the outside, but like dust, what's making it dusty?
Yeah, it's true.
Isn't like dust like a combination of dirt and like dead skin from like your body and all this other stuff floating down? Like, where's the dust coming from?
Interesting, yeah.
Where are the spiders coming from, and why are so many spiders making so many webs? Isn't it like dead real estate? Wouldn't they know that not a lot of bugs come up here?
Yeah.
I don't know.
True. I mean,
like for me, it's just like cliche.
It is cliche. Old. It is. It's a way to convey that. Yeah, that it's super old. No one's visited it in a long time. It's been closed off. So. Yeah, but I'm always curious though how they did a damn good job because it looked old. I mean, if we're to believe that cobwebs and dust make something look old, then they succeeded.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like they took a reverse of a vacuum and just went
shot all over the place.
Yeah,
and we get the glimpse of the wheelchair.
Yeah,
for obviously it's a small old wooden wheelchair, creepy looking. I it's on the poster. And I just always thought it was really, it's a really cool and powerful image. But he calls, after he hears the music box, I think doesn't he call Claire over?
Yeah, Claire gets, Russell is very quiet when he's kind of experienced all this, but Claire is far more emotional about it. She kind of pieces everything together pretty fast. You notice that the wheelchair is for a small person. I mean, so it's most likely for a child.
Yeah.
And she feels pretty upset about it. And then Russell kind of explains to her about the music box and about the journal from 1909.
Clearly written by a child.
Yeah. So, they've got kind of their first big clues of what's going on. And I think at this point in the film, Russell explains to Claire that all this stuff that's been happening to him is maybe for this person or boy or child to communicate with him.
Yeah, they're doing.
And then we start getting a push from Russell to figure out what's going on. So I think now they try to investigate what's happened before in the house.
Correct.
So they go to the Historical Society, pull up some documents. Huxley says, "Hey, get out of there." And then I think not too long afterwards, Huxley then talks to Senator Carmichael, says, "Hey, people are checking this out."
Yeah, just to kind of, hey, I want you to be aware that this is happening. They are getting some sort of assistance. I mean, they're going. I don't know if this is a library. Libraries keep old newspaper
No, it's the
clippings.
historical society, the same place that Claire works
Was it
for.
the same place?
And then
I
they
thought it was
also
a
look
different
at
place.
once they've got like the data or whatever, and they
Hmm.
suspect something weird might have happened during that time, they go to what like some sort of archive where they have like those old newspaper
Yeah,
things. And I love this technology.
me
I've
too.
never messed with it before, but they do it in like The Ring and a bunch of other movies.
I've used it before, actually.
Yeah.
Something similar back in the, looking up old documents. It's almost on like microfiche. And so part of my job back in the day, not so much anymore because documents are mainly digital these days. But yeah, I'd have to, you would take almost like a tape, and you pop it in, and you kind of, there's different ones, but you turn and it would, fast forward to different areas. And this is kind of, this is a little different, but the same sort of concept.
I've always loved these because they seem so cool. It's also, like you can restore like old 35 millimeter film and it looks amazing. Like we've always had pretty good technology, even though it's progressed throughout the years. But if you just take the time to clean it up, it looks great. And that's what I've always liked about these is, yeah, these are super old, but they're super clear. They've got like this whole wealth of information. You can zoom in on them. They're just awesome. I just kind of love the idea. Kind of would want to mess with one at some point. But yeah, and then they kind of do some investigative work there, and that's where they find out, um,
Yeah,
something happened to the boy.
no,
No, the daughter.
yeah, the daughter of a previous, was it a previous resident or owner, or
Well, this is for Carmichael, right?
I
Because we're gonna find out later that issues with the will of these two children, I think.
no,
No, I'm getting this mixed
no,
up
yeah,
then.
no, it's okay because it is, this part is a little a little confusing. I think that they wanted just to find out if anything weird had happened in the home. They come across an article where I think it was a previous resident, maybe I'm not going to say owner, but someone else was living there, and there was an accident, and I think their daughter was
Okay, so
killed.
this is just a red herring,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
This is just something that kind of throws them off the trail for a bit.
I don't know if it throws them off. I mean,
But
you
we know it's instead of a girl, it's going to be Michael or
Joseph.
Carmichael.
Yeah, Carmichael. Yeah, Carmichael. Yeah, but we know it's Joseph. But the girl that was killed, she died kind of similar to how his daughter died, which is what I think she got. It was some sort of accident.
It was some sort of like coal cart.
Yeah, and so he sees a similarity. They go. Yeah, I think they go to the oh gosh, I think they go to the cemetery. They see the plots, the tombstones, and and I think he says something to Claire like, they're trying to communicate with me. This is very similar to how my daughter died. So this isn't a coincidence. So they do some more research. Um, I think he's looking through. Yeah, I think he's at home. He's reminiscing. He's looking through an old photo album of him and his family.
Yeah, that's where we get the ball scene.
Oh man,
And that scene's dope.
it's really good. It is, like you were saying earlier. It's easily one, two, top three freakiest parts in this movie.
Don't they like mess with that same scene in like Sinister or The Conjuring 2 or something, where they have that same scene with the ball on the staircase?
Probably.
I know I've seen this before again, not too long ago. But yeah, it's always creepy. And of course it's like relevant because that's his daughter's ball,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, we see her. I think there's a scene earlier in the movie where he's leaving his old apartment to move to Washington, and they're boxing up everything, and I think he just has a moment where he flashes back, and his daughter's playing with the ball. I think she throws it to him or something, and so yeah, so he keeps the ball. It's very important to him.
Yeah, I remember when I was watching this last night, seeing that I was like, oh yeah, I'm in for a pretty good movie because it's doing some interesting stuff with the cutting.
It's a fantastic scene. It's very chilling. I again, there's two scenes in this movie. It's the scene with that I said earlier, the scene with the wheelchair, and this scene. And every time, and I've seen this movie so many times, and I know it's coming, and I know it's going to happen, and it still gets me every time.
Yeah, I find it scary, but I find it scary in a way that doesn't make me jump or whatever. It just creeps me out sort of internally, and it makes my eyes water.
It to me, it reminds me. It doesn't. It's not that it's the same, but it's the same feeling I get when I watch it, which is The Exorcist and the spider walk scene that we've talked about in the past. I know it's coming, but it is so eerie to me and freaky to me, and it always. It's just a scene that it just gives me the chills every single time. And again, it's a sign of a great scene or a great movie that can do that to you after you've seen it, several times.
I mean, it's a well constructed scene, and I think we've talked about this. Like Howard Hawks is all about, yeah. If you make like a good movie is like a scene that has like five good scenes in it, and this movie that's like one of its great scenes, like it for sure. So if we're only like talking about if a movie's good based on the number of good scenes it has, that's one of like the most well constructed like horror scenes I've seen in a very long time. Then yeah, like
Yeah.
it earns that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then not too long afterwards, he does the whole psychic thing, and so then the seance happens.
But remember, we don't want to skip the ball comes down. The ball comes down the stairs, excuse me. And he takes the ball.
Yeah, we've talked about it though.
Yeah.
He tries to get rid of it, the ball comes
Yeah,
back.
drives it to the bridge, throws it in the river, and he comes home, and here comes the ball.
Mhm.
Yeah, we did. We chatted about it a little earlier.
I
I
know.
just love the scene so much. I know. Yeah, but correct. Yeah, I think at this point, he goes to the university. They mention a medium, and this is where the seance happens.
Yep. Very spooky. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is like the first time something like a seance happened on film in this way. It's like the earliest example of it for me that I've seen.
It's really cool.
Where they've got, he's recording it, they're at the table, and then at least the first part of this seance, because there's like two parts. The first part is with the pen and paper, where the medium is trying to
And
talk.
pencil and paper, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to
I know
say.
what you're saying.
Like
Same
it is
difference.
pencil.
Yeah.
And she's just kind of going. She's just writing, and she's not really writing anything. She's just kind of like a
Almost scribbles.
what's that like device that records or checks for earthquakes?
Oh, crap. Yeah, I know what you're talking
it's
about.
exactly like that, or like a lie detector test where you just kind of like got a needle.
Yeah.
Like her arm is the needle.
It scribbles.
And as
kind
soon
of
as the
does
boy starts talking, that's when it's not scribbles anymore. It's like the written word of what the boy is saying. So like help me or Joseph or something like that. But besides that, it's like
I know what you're talking about. Just the scribbling, and it's really gibberish. It's nothing until she makes contact with this spirit or this entity.
Right. And this is really, really cool. So the medium, they're asking questions. The medium's getting the boy's name. I forget what else happens. I just remember it being cool.
Well, but before it's very cool. What I liked before it all started, because I think the medium is Lynn, and she's joined by her husband. And while they're setting up, she goes and walks up to the attic, and just she doesn't say anything, but you get the feeling that this is I'm feeling this energy.
I feel like if I was a medium and I was like sensitive to that stuff, I wouldn't want to be going up to like a place where this boy died and where he's probably chilling in the afterlife up there, being all like angry and stuff.
Oh gosh, yeah. Because I mean, if this has happened to John, and he's feeling whatever he's feeling, if you are a medium and you're legit, you get a whole other feeling of what's happening, and it's got to be a lot worse than what they're feeling, what they're sensing, what they're hearing. It's magnified when it comes to this person. They're right. I mean, it's almost like I don't know, a beacon of this just I don't know, just terrible bad energy.
Right. So this scene's about 10 minutes long or something like that. And if we're going on the Howard Hawks metric, this is another really, really great scene.
Yeah.
It's split into two parts, one with the writing, and then one with that weird like aluminum cone that's kind of on the table.
Yeah, what do you think that is? Do you think that's
I think that's like supposed to be like an antenna for Joseph.
Oh, that's great. I love it.
I don't know.
Yeah,
though.
the antenna for the spirits.
Yes, and sort of like just some way to get him to communicate easier, like to pick him up.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
An antenna for the afterlife or something. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I think you're right though. I think you're right on the money. I mean, it makes sense. And then there's a glass, some sort of glass. I don't know what kind of glass it is. Just a glass, some crystal glass on the table, and then it shoots across the room and hits, and just, I don't know what it hits, the fireplace, or just shatters. Very, very,
Right.
very cool.
So the medium is trying to communicate, and then like Joseph just kind of throws a fit. Is kind of how I took it, because I've seen this movie already. But you've got like people trying to like jump in on his house, and he's trying to get help, but not in the way he necessarily wants it. Then so you got some lady trying to like ask him a bunch of questions. I probably get mad too.
Yeah,
So then he throws a glass across the room.
shoots the glass. I like getting back to the first part of the seance when, like you're saying, when she's asking questions to Joseph, and she's asking specific questions. What's your name? How did you die? And then she asks something about, what do you want or something, and he keeps saying help, and then John. And I was very, very, very cool. Very,
Right. And this
I
is
just
just
love
kind
the
of
scene.
like it's what's the word? It's not clarification. It's not evidence. It's what? Can you help
Like
me out?
confirmation.
There
Or
we
what?
go.
Yeah.
God, it's
It's all right.
it's confirmation that Russell is right, that someone is trying to communicate with him and needs his help. And so not right after this the séance, Russell then goes back and listens to the tape
Oh
again.
man, this is great. Oh,
And this reminds me of like The Conversation or something, where, or even there's a scene like in The Exorcist too, with the whole like playing the stuff backwards,
backwards. I love stuff like
where
this. Yeah.
he's just kind of like going back, and he couldn't hear it during the seance, but he can hear it on the tape where John is taught. Joseph is, why are the two name characters both named with J names,
I
dude?
know. John
Where
is
Baby Carmichael is
baby Carly.
trying to talk, or his voice is picking up on the tape, and so
Yeah.
he's going back. And it honestly kind of like goes on a little bit too long for me, because he's going like,
Well,
he does it like 10 times. I was like, dude,
But each time he's turning up the volume,
yeah, but you heard it the first time.
I know, but what it reminded me of is Sixth Sense. The Sixth Sense with Bruce Willis when
No, I
he's
know the movie.
Yeah, no, I know. But what I'm saying is, do you remember there's a scene where he's doing that, the tape recorder, and then he turns it up and you can hear stuff in the background?
Yeah, but nothing was changing. He heard that voice like 10 fucking times. Come on, man.
I know,
How many
but
times
I
do you have
love
to
the
hear it?
scene. But see, to me,
I like it too. I like it a lot,
I
but
didn't
it's
think-
like it would have been better if you just like didn't like go back 2 more times.
I thought it was. I thought it was just enough. I didn't think it was as too many times.
That's
but
funny
we'll-
because I got it. It's like you're testing my patience. This movie's an hour and 45 minutes. It could have been an hour and like 44 minutes.
That's hilarious, man. So so he I think don't we get it like after he hears all this, and it's super powerful, and we does he call Claire over? Because I know he calls Claire. He is obviously just super upset and emotional about this, and then he calls Claire on the telephone, and he passes out. Doesn't he pass out?
Yeah, he's going through some stuff right here. Everything's kind of spooky, and it's not really explained. I just assumed it was like the stress, or like it was too spooky for him, But yeah, he passes out attempting to call someone.
It's
I think
Claire.
that someone is supposed to be Claire,
Oh, no,
because
it
then
is-
Claire shows up.
No,
not
it
too
is
long
Claire
after.
because he calls Claire and he
No,
apologizes.
but we don't know who he's calling, right?
Yeah, we do. He
I
says,
don't remember him being on the phone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he was on the phone. He calls. He goes into the other room after he's heard this, and he's like I said, he's very emotional. He picks up the phone. He apologizes for calling. I think I don't know if he says, "I'm sorry for calling so late." And then he passes out. Claire comes over. She listens to it. She's just as upset as he is. So that all happens. I think at some point around this time, we hear this, or we see this vision of what had transpired. The father, years and years ago, drowning this boy. We see, we see it.
We see the flashback, and what's interesting is I didn't take it as Russell getting that information. I thought it was just for the audience.
I think so.
But we find out later on that, like Russell says, that he saw what happened. when he's talking to Senator Carmichael. So I think this is supposed to be a dream sequence for
Oh, okay.
Russell,
Yeah, because we hear that. I mean,
but
you
it's
know,
not obvious.
no, it's not. That we know the banging is, we thought, of course, we thought it was the furnace or the pipes. No, it was the boy being drowned and he's banging against the side of the tub.
Is this and when he's like listening back to the tapes, does he hear mention of the well? Or does he find that when he's looking at sort of like the records
I
of like the lots being
No,
sold and
I
all that?
think there were certain I don't remember if where the well came into
Oh
play
well,
here.
it comes into play at some point, and then he sort of does some digging, finds that the well is probably the place where the boy was buried.
Yeah.
And then he actually goes and intrudes on this person's who's just trying to enjoy her life, right, with her family.
Yeah.
And then he mentions that the seance happened 3 nights ago, and then she's like, "Oh, 3 nights ago? That's crazy. That's when my daughter saw a boy coming out of the floorboards." And then
Yeah.
she like says, "Okay, you can have permission to." Well, as another spooky scene happens, and I
Yeah.
found this very interesting because like when we're going into the spooky scene, we're actually getting like what seems to be a perspective shot of something outside of the house, and then it moves into the house
Yeah.
through the wall. But it's like Russell's already underneath, or I'm sorry, baby Carmichael
Joseph,
is
yeah.
already underneath the like house. Why is he like coming in, quote unquote, from outside of the house? I just thought it was like this weird framing device that the movie was using,
I agree. I felt that that
and it uses
particular
it twice.
it does it twice. I felt it was irrelevant. It didn't make any sense. Before, just go back just a little bit because the scene so when we go to see this, this drowning in the bathroom, I don't know about you, but I loved this shot. And this was the shot of going up the stairs and going through going up the floors and going up. I've always loved, I don't know what you call this shot. It's from a different perspective. I know you see Sam Raimi does it in some of his movies. And I don't know what it's called, but I've always really liked this. And we see it a couple times. We see it when we see this, the boy being drowned by his father, this scene going it's really fast and it's going up the stairs and sometimes it goes through doors. And I don't know what it's called. I don't know if there's a name for it, but it's always it's a super cool visual for me. We see it later on in the movie too with the wheelchair. But yeah, I think there was at some point, I thought on the paper there were a few words written down, and I think it was written down by John, and he wrote like ranch, he wrote the word Carmichael, he wrote the word metal. So they started investigating some more and found out that I think the Carmichaels had owned a ranch. Over time it was it was converted, I think, just to a regular single family residence. I do know it's on water or near water, but they go, yeah, like you said, they go to this house. The woman basically said, hey, if this was prior to 3 days ago, I would have told you, get the hell out of here. But this is what my daughter saw 3 days ago. They show them the bedroom, and of course, they want to basically dig, I think it was hardwood floors. So they want to dig, and she goes, well, give me some time to think about it. And then I think her and her daughter are, sleeping. The daughter doesn't look like she's sleeping at all, probably can't sleep because of what happened. And she goes back to the bedroom and sees the same image that she saw 3 days ago, which is Joseph drowning. And at that point, it's like, yes, yeah, you can dig. So go ahead. And I think they start digging. There's people in there helping. I don't know. I think it's not super important, but I think these are probably maybe some of the students that he, from the university is helping him out.
Oh, I didn't think that was it at all. I thought it was just some random handyman. The guy had like a truck and everything, and
Was it?
professional equipment.
Oh, and maybe you're right. Yeah. So they dig. They find.
Not important.
Yeah. So they find the well. They're digging in the well. They find a skeleton.
Yeah. I wonder who it could be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mystery, right? So, I think the I don't know, the police are there, the detective or whoever. Do you know who this is? John, and he plays dumb. Of course he knows who it is, but he doesn't want to say anything. Everyone leaves. he comes back to the house, breaks one of the windows, goes back down the into the well, and then he can't find the necklace, but then the necklace appears.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah,
The way they just kind of reversed the film.
kind of the reverse film.
Yeah, I'm into that.
I love that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't see that anymore. It's kind of a lost art. I guess there's no need for it with CGI and everything else, but I love those types of effects. So he finds the necklace, because I mean they keep calling it a gold medal, but it's a necklace. It's called a family heirloom. I think it's mentioned.
It has his name on it, right? I thought it was like some sort of almost like a birth certificate that proves that he is who he is.
Well, it was probably just something that that was engraved for him, when he was a kid, and something he wore. Is a gold chain.
Right. Either way, it's some sort of proof for him to sort of verify who his identity is.
Yeah, it's true. So, I know there was a mention of early on. There was a mention of John had written down a Sacred Heart, and I think Claire had mentioned about there used to be an orphanage, back in the day called Sacred Heart. Does that sounds about right? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, because I think that's around the time we see the, we talked about it earlier, the wheelchair scene. They talk about this. Again, I know we're going back a little bit, but I love this wheelchair scene so much. Claire hears it. They talk about Sacred Heart, and then she comes out of the room and then sees the wheelchair.
Yeah.
I know we're going back just a little bit, but again, I love this part so much because it's so cool. It's just chilling at the top of the stairs. Yeah. So anyways,
it's scary.
Yeah. So, Minnie has called, Mr. Carmichael, kind of to tell him what's up. He writes down the names, John and Claire. They're going through the old files, blah, blah, blah. All these things are happening at this point, we start to kind of, John is piecing together everything that's kind of, happened. We find out, that the little boy is Joseph Carmichael. The Senator Carmichael is supposed to be Joseph. We know that he's not the real deal. Interrupt me at any time, but the family, the Carmichael family was rich. There was a mother and a father, and they had a son. The mother had passed away, and the son was to he was the heir. He was the heir.
I thought Father Carmichael was the stepfather for baby Carmichael, and that's why the will was not bequeathed to him, and instead it was going to baby Carmichael.
I don't think it was stepfather. I think it was just his father, so it would be the son-in-law, and the grandfather didn't like him. I think the dad's name was, I don't know if it was Richard. I don't know why that's jumping out at me, but I'm probably wrong on that. He did not like the father, so he basically willed everything to Joseph. But Joseph was he had some sort of arthritis. His health was horrible, and we were talking early 1900s. So, the father is like, well, I think John had mentioned somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 or $70 million that Joseph is going to inherit once the grandfather passes away. But the son-in-law, Joseph's dad, isn't going to get any of this because Joseph is frail. He is going to die. So he concocts a plan. I am going to.
Well, the money, let's say baby Carmichael dies, the money will then not go to the father.
Yeah.
It'll then go to charity.
Yeah.
So what Father Carmichael, not Grandfather Carmichael, right? Because Grandfather Carmichael is the one who has the money, but Father Carmichael concocts a plan. I'm just going to kill the boy. He's frail. I'm not going to take a chance on it because if he dies before he turns 18, the money just goes away. So he kills baby Carmichael. Then he sends another boy that he just gets from the orphanage to Europe.
Switzerland.
Right. Becomes magically cured.
Well, it's
comes back
10 years later. But see, they both go to Switzerland, and because of the war, it was all convenience. It all worked itself out because so much time they couldn't come back because of the war. I'm not sure quite why that was, but it's convenient as to the story. They were gone 10 years. So when he comes back, he's 18. So 10 years, I mean, of course he's not going to look the same. So anyone that had known Joseph to begin with doesn't know him now. For all they know, it's him. And so 10 years has passed. He's 18. This is where the changeling comes in. He's been switched out. The true heir, Joseph, was murdered by the father. He was drowned. We go to Sacred Heart Orphanage. We replace him with this other kid, this other boy. He's healthy. We're gonna reap the benefits of all these millions of dollars.
Right, and this boy, this changeling that was replaced with the baby Carmichael, is actually Senator Carmichael.
Senator Carmichael,
right.
Correct. And and it's like, does he doesn't seem to know this, but he's always had a suspicion that maybe
he at least knows something fishy was going on. He knows enough that he needs to hide it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So at this point, we have Senator John confronts Mr. Carmichael, Senator Carmichael, at the airport. He's getting on his private jet. He's rambling. It's loud. I mean, the jet's going. They're getting ready to leave, and so he's rambling. He's yelling a bunch of stuff. He's contained. He does have that necklace in his hand. Senator Carmichael leaves. I think he tells someone, hey, call up so and so, call up Captain, DeWitt, her so and so, have them check out John.
Right. So DeWitt does check out John, and then he makes some threats, saying, "Hey, man, we're going to come back with a warrant. We're going to get that necklace that Senator Carmichael lost that he believes you have. So stop causing trouble, or you're going to have some trouble come towards you." So he's basically blackmailing him to get him to stop all this nonsense from Senator Carmichael's perspective anyway, because his position is very sensitive and powerful and important for him.
Sure.
So, obviously baby dead Carmichael doesn't like this. And then on his way out of there, DeWitt's, wherever he's going to go, probably to get the warrant, right? Doesn't matter. His car becomes fully upturned. There's a giant hole in the windshield, and DeWitt dies. And this is probably around the time that when Russell at the house, when a mirror breaks when he's looking into it, and it kind of stabs him in the neck. So it's probably baby Carmichael doing some weird stuff, baby dead magic stuff, and killing DeWitt, and then kind of unintentionally hurting Russell.
Yeah, a little shard of glass, I think, from the mirror gets him. But yeah.
So Carmichael,
kind of a cool scene though, right? We see this face of DeWitt. I like that. I mean, it's very reminiscent of that time. I don't, late 70s, early 80s. But so that's a cool scene. Yeah, DeWitt is dead. Claire calls him on the payphone. In the meantime, John's lease has been canceled. Claire's been, forced out of the historical society. She's been forced to resign. So DeWitt's dead.
Right. This is just more ploys by Carmichael to get all this stuff to stop.
Mr. Carmichael comes back, finds out that DeWitt, has died, calls a meeting between him and John. John comes to the senator's house. John basically tells him, look, this is the deal, man. This is what happened. Of course, Mr. Carmichael is upset by it. He loved his father. He thought his father was a good man. And here is John, Russell, telling all this, he thinks are lies, this can't be real, So he goes to write him a check, how much is it going to cost? And I don't want your money, so he goes to leave. I think he puts down he gives him the necklace, he gives him the tape recordings. I can't remember what else he puts on the table, but yeah. So what else happens here?
Oh, we get the last set piece of the movie. I think Russell wants to communicate with John in some fashion again, or maybe he's just coming back from Carmichael to say, this is done.
I think Claire calls John. There's no answer. So she goes to the house while John is with Senator Carmichael. So Claire gets to the house.
The timeline isn't clear because that's what
Yeah.
I thought too. But I'm not so sure
I think it's around this time.
because Russell shows up not long afterwards. Because then she gets chased away by the wheelchair.
Because she comes in the house. She can't find John, but that she hears John's voice. So she goes to the second floor, doesn't see him, goes to the third floor, because she's hearing his voice. And so then we see the wheelchair coming at her. And I love this part because this is, from the perspective of the wheelchair, this wheelchair is chasing her down these, down the stairs. It's really, I enjoyed it a lot. She ends up falling down the stairs. So does the wheelchair. John shows up to the house and, so, that he takes her out of the house. She's upset. He goes back in the house and she's like, don't do this, Claire, John, it's not a good idea to get back in the house. But it's kind of cool because then we see the chandeliers moving, but it's all in a slow, kind of cool slow motion. There's all this wind and not sure why there's wind, but there's wind and he gets pushed off of the balcony, falls to the ground. I like this scene as well. I love the whole idea of this chandelier. It's just the slow motion thing is really cool, but, did you like that?
Yeah, that's cool.
I did, right? The whole slow motion thing is cool with me with the chandelier. I don't know. It kind of added a dimension to the scene, but he falls off the balcony, lands on the ground. I think he's knocked out for a little bit. The senator at this point is we see the senator come to the house. And I'd seen this scene several times, but this kind of was confusing. So it's like the senator really didn't come to the house. We think he's coming in the house. The house is now on fire. He's walking up the stairs. The stairs collapse, but he's walking, primarily up to the third floor, where all this had happened, to see the drowning of the real Joseph by his father.
Yeah, it's almost like a projection of him. I was expecting that he would stop it from happening, and that would be like sort of retribution for him, or like not passing the punishment that baby Carmichael was going to pass, which would be killing Senator Carmichael. But he doesn't stop it. He just watches it, and that's just confirmation that his father was a murderer, and he did it for profit.
Yeah. They inherited all of this wealth, and he basically reaped the benefits of this his whole life, and it wasn't his. He didn't deserve it. It wasn't his. It was all just a big damn lie. So, I think there's a scene where the chandelier almost hits John. John gets up to leave the house. The house starts to kind of go up in flames, right? And then we see the senator. The senator's really not there, but it's like this, this vision or this image of him there and seeing all this, but he's really still in his home, and he has a heart attack, and dies, because of this. This was obviously this was a lot for him to take in, and he has a heart attack, and I don't know, is it because of that, or is it because Joseph in some way has has caused this heart attack?
Oh, it's definitely Joseph. 100%.
Yeah.
Yep. It's him passing judgment and, becoming at peace or whatever. Like, he has to punish someone. The dad is dead, so he has to punish Carmichael.
Yeah. He's the next best thing.
Well, yeah, that's his changeling. That's the one that got his fortune, essentially.
Yeah. Got what was supposed to be
the reason
him.
For him being dead in the first place.
Being murdered. That's really what this boils down to, is he was murdered, so I think Mr. Carmichael was taken away in the ambulance. I don't know if he was pronounced dead at the time, but we assume he's dead. Then the ambulance passes by the house, the house is burning down. It's going up in flames. The next scene I think is morning, and we see the remnants of this burned down house. It's gone. There's some things there. We see the wheelchair, and we see the music box, and then the music box opens up and plays the music, and then we got credits.
Yeah.
Very indicative of again, that time, mid 70s to early 80s. I would say this type of movie did a lot of that stuff. Amityville Horror, The Omen, similar type movies would do something like this. And so, even like we were talking about earlier, Burnt Offerings, it was, like I said, it was very, it was done a lot, very, very much so around that time. So yeah, that's what we get the end credits, and the senator is dead, and
Yeah. I remember like a bunch of people dying in this movie when I was a kid, or no one dying. I don't remember. But there's only like really 3 deaths on screen. One of them has already happened. So it's really only 2 that takes place in the, the present timeline. One doesn't even happen on screen. It just kind of happens and we find out about it. And then we see Carmichael kind of have like a heart attack.
yeah,
It's kind of interesting. There's only 2 deaths in the movie. They're not like leading up from like big scares. They're just kind of like these things that happen.
yeah,
It's very interesting from a horror movie. Like all the scares come from just the communication from Joseph, or I'm sorry, baby Carmichael to Russell.
yeah. You're right, though. It's Joseph. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I think you see that a lot in these types of movies. A ghost movie, there's usually not a lot of deaths. There's just a lot of scares, a lot of weird, kind of creepy, unsettling, unexplainable things that happen, and that's why I like them so much. I don't need kills or people getting butchered or anything. If we're watching a slasher, then okay, then it's expected. But in a movie like this, I am not expecting it, and I'm okay if I don't get it. I just like all the kind of eerie stuff that happens, and and again, if the music is right, it definitely sets the mood, and it does in this movie, so, but anyways, anything else you want to add
No, it's a good
for the
movie.
Changeling? Yeah, really
It's
good
scary.
movie.
It's creepy.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
it's more of a drama than it is a scary movie, honestly.
You think so?
Yep.
Yeah,
100%.
I don't know. I don't know if I would disagree with you on that. It's one of my favorites. That's why I suggested it. It holds up for me. I've seen it several times over the years, and I never am disappointed. I don't feel like it's dated. I mean, obviously we know it's 1980, but I feel like it holds up very much, And so I think we both on the same page on this one. If there's someone out there that hasn't seen it, I think we would both, would you agree? Both recommend this to a listener?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say check it out. I think they would enjoy it a lot. George C. Scott is a fantastic actor. We see him years later in Exorcist 3, which a lot of people don't talk about. Is great in that as well. He's done a ton of movies, but since we're a horror podcast, we're talking horror. The Changeling and Exorcist 3. So, well, I guess that'll do it. Nothing else you wanna throw out?
Have a good day, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Join us next week. We are talking about 2001's The Others, starring Nicole Kidman. Thanks again. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow us at both Twitter and Instagram at Ear for Fear. You can also check out our website, earforfear.com. There you can purchase merch and stay up to date on current episodes as well as news and events. We hope you come back and get an earful. See you soon.